Hello, beautiful people. What happens when a couple who are madly in love start behaving like enemies? Their friends notice, chaos spreads, and the truth is far more surprising than it seems. Shadows between us. Simon and Sarah had always been known as the perfect couple. Everyone admired them. They laughed easily, shared little secrets, and were almost inseparable. Whether it was dancing in the kitchen late at night or holding hands during quiet walks, their love seemed effortless. They cared for each other and supported each other in every way. Their friends often said that their love was something rare, something almost magical. Friends also said they looked like they were still in the first days of romance, even after years of marriage. But one morning, everything changed. It was an ordinary Sunday. The sun was bright, and the smell of toast filled the kitchen. Simon sat at the table, reading the newspaper. Sarah poured herself some tea. Normally, they would talk about their plans for the day, laugh about small things, or tease each other with gentle jokes. But not this morning. Sarah placed the cup loudly on the table. Simon didn't look up. She sighed, clearly annoyed. "Pass me the butter," she said sharply. Simon didn't answer right away. He slowly pushed the butter toward her, his face cold. "Thanks," she muttered, her voice flat. Simon finally spoke, but his tone was dry. "Maybe say it properly next time." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Oh, really?" I said thanks. "What more do you want?" The room grew heavy with silence. For the first time in years, their breakfast felt like a battlefield. That evening, their closest friends, Jake and Laura, came to visit. The four of them often spent weekends together, cooking, watching movies, or going out. But tonight felt different. Jake immediately noticed the strange air between Simon and Sarah. "Hey, what's wrong with you two?" Jake asked, half laughing, trying to lighten the mood. "Nothing," Simon replied quickly. Sarah crossed her arms. "Yes, nothing at all." But her tone was sharp, and the tension was impossible to ignore. Jake exchanged a quick glance with Laura. Laura raised her eyebrows but said nothing. The evening was filled with small fights. Sarah complained about Simon leaving the dishes undone. Simon said Sarah was always on her phone. They interrupted each other, snapped at each other, and looked like enemies instead of lovers. Jake tried to laugh it off. "Come on, you two. You're always like a dream couple. What's going on?" Simon forced a smile. "Dreams end too, Jake." Sarah gave a bitter laugh. "Yes, sometimes they turn into nightmares." Jake fell silent. Laura's eyes widened slightly. Later that night, after Simon and Sarah went upstairs, Jake shook his head. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered to Laura. "Do you remember how Simon once jumped into the lake just to pull Sarah's scarf out of the water? He laughed the whole time, even though it was freezing. Who fights over butter and dishes when they've loved like that?" Laura smiled faintly, but it wasn't the warm smile Jake expected. "People change, Jake. Even the strongest love can die." Jake frowned. "Not Simon and Sarah. I know them. They were unshakable." He remembered another moment, the summer by the swimming pool. Sarah had slipped and almost fell into the deep end. Simon had lunged without thinking, catching her hand just in time. They had laughed afterward, dripping wet, teasing each other, completely carefree. Now, that joy felt distant and almost unbelievable. Every gesture between them had always carried a quiet, undeniable love. A week later, they all attended the wedding of their old college friend, Clara. Everyone was in a joyful mood, except Simon and Sarah. At the reception, when couples went to the dance floor, Simon stood still. "Shall we dance?" Sarah asked, trying to sound polite. Simon gave her a cold look. But, so you can step on my feet like last time? Gasps came from nearby tables. Sarah flushed red. Well, maybe if you didn't drag me like a robot, I wouldn't, she shot back. The music continued, but their sharp voices cut through the hall. Guests turned to look. People whispered. At the buffet table, Simon snapped at Sarah again. Maybe eat slower, Sarah. Not everything is running away from you. Sarah slammed her plate down. At least I don't eat like a king and leave crumbs everywhere. The whispers grew louder. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was just a couple's silly fight. But others exchanged worried looks. Jake pulled Laura aside. This is bad. This isn't them. This isn't normal. Laura only shrugged. Maybe it is now. Maybe they're finally showing their true colors. But Jake's heart felt heavy. The strange behavior continued. At a cafe with friends, Simon ignored Sarah completely, even when she asked for sugar. At a family dinner, Sarah mocked Simon in front of his cousins, calling him lazy. He responded by calling her careless. People around them grew uncomfortable. Whispers spread. Everyone began asking, what happened to Simon and Sarah? Jake could not stop thinking. He remembered how Simon once stayed awake the whole night when Sarah had a fever, bringing her water every hour. He remembered Sarah baking Simon's favorite cake just to cheer him after a hard week. They had been partners, friends, lovers. Now they looked like enemies. It didn't make sense. Just a few days later, Simon and Sarah's quiet tension erupted into a sharp argument right in front of Jake and Laura. They sat on the couch, the TV silent. Simon said quietly at first, "You never listen to me anymore." Sarah's eyes flashed. "I listen. But you never hear anything I say." Simon stood up. "I'm tired of being ignored." Sarah shouted back, "Ignored? You don't even care about me." The shouting grew louder, their hands gesturing, voices overlapping. Jake and Laura could only watch, stunned at how sharply the two could turn on each other. One evening, Simon called Jake privately. "Jake, meet me tomorrow. Alone." Jake was surprised. "Why not Sarah too?" "Just me," Simon said firmly. The next day, they met at a quiet park. Simon looked tired but determined. "Jake, I need to tell you something. Sarah and I are not what you think. We're not falling apart. We're pretending." Jake's eyes widened. "Pretending? But why?" Simon leaned closer. "Because Laura is trying to destroy us." Jake froze. "Laura? My Laura? That's crazy." Simon shook his head. "No, Jake. Listen carefully. At first, her manipulations were small. She copied Sarah's texts, changed words, deleted some, and even sent some to me pretending they were from Sarah. She made it look like Sarah insulted me. And she did the same to Sarah, making it look like I mocked her. We fought a little because her lies were convincing. But then we discovered the truth." Jake's face turned pale. "How did you discover it?" Simon's eyes darkened. "I noticed something strange. One night, Sarah showed me a message that seemed off. It had words she never used. I checked her phone and realized someone had edited messages and forwarded them. Then we saw Laura's name logged into Sarah's email account. That's when we knew it had to be her." Jake's jaw dropped. "That's unbelievable." Simon nodded. "Yes. But we didn't stop there. We continued pretending to fight, to see how far she would go. And she did something new. She started showing up at places uninvited, like the cafe where Sarah and I were having breakfast, or at a bookshop when we met to discuss a gift. She tried to talk to us separately, planting even more doubts. It became obvious she was orchestrating everything. That's when we were completely sure about her intentions. Jake covered his face with his hands. But why would she do all this? Simon's voice grew heavy. Maybe because she was jealous? She told Sarah once, years ago, that she wished she had a husband like me. She wanted what we had. And when she couldn't have it, she decided to break us. That's why we continued the act, even after discovering her tricks, so we could watch how far she would go. Jake shook his head in disbelief. I can't believe this. Laura? My Laura? Simon put a hand on his shoulder. I know this is hard, Jake, but you're our friend, and you deserve to know the truth. That night, Simon and Sarah asked Laura to come over. She came, smiling as usual. But her smile froze when she saw their serious faces. Laura, Sarah said quietly, we know everything. Laura tried to laugh. Know what? Simon placed printed copies of the fake emails and messages on the table. Laura's face turned pale. Why? Sarah asked, her voice breaking. Why would you do this to us? We trusted you. We loved you like family. Laura's eyes filled with tears. Because you had everything. Love, respect, happiness. And I had nothing. Jake never looked at me the way Simon looked at you, Sarah. Do you know what it feels like to be invisible beside your best friends? I wanted to break it because I couldn't stand seeing it anymore. Jake, who had come later, stood frozen at the door. His heart shattered hearing Laura's confession. Laura covered her face and sobbed. I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you this much. I just couldn't stop myself. Sarah wiped her tears, but her voice was strong. Laura, you didn't just hurt us. You hurt Jake. You hurt our trust. We can forgive mistakes, but not betrayal. Jake walked out without saying a word. Laura called after him, but he didn't look back. After that night, Simon and Sarah stopped pretending. They returned to being the couple everyone once admired. Their bond was stronger than ever because they had faced the worst storm together and survived. People were relieved to see them happy again, though no one knew the full truth except Jake. Laura left quietly from their lives, her shadow fading away. Simon once told Sarah, as they sat together on the porch, holding hands, no matter what happens, no one can break us apart, not even those we trust the most. And Sarah smiled, leaning on his shoulder. Because love, real love, always fights back. And that's the end of our story. Simon and Sarah proved that true love can survive even the darkest shadows. Remember, trust and patience can uncover the truth, no matter how hidden it seems. Thanks for listening. And stay tuned for more amazing stories.